was gonna say, y'all might have
pretty good. How
trip.
about you?
Look, your eyes are
Good.
like
Morning,
that.
Judge. Morning.
Oh, it's a whole lot better.
I didn't
Rinse it,
Carol
so
drove
you
all the way
get
home yesterday, so I didn't have to drive. It was kind of a whirlwind.
They do.
Yeah, it was wonderful.
7:30. Okay.
Very nice.
Cool. Yeah.
I got there, there were people everywhere. This looked great. We heard it.
Have you ever been?
I got 8:30.
No, Wade wouldn't take me to anything until one of his friends said.
8:30. Okay, good morning, everyone. It's 8:30. We're going to go ahead and call this workshop of Commissioners Court to order. And the topic this morning is discussions pertaining to the 23 budget and tax rate, and may include other items. With that being said, here we are. Let's see, Commissioner Blacksher, I believe you were the one that requested this morning.
Yes,
Start
sir.
us off.
We need to get on the ball before we get, behind. Did everybody get a copy of what you got out there? Okay. As you can see, our rate is down.
0.9.
Yeah, so, I guess we need to kind of look at where we are budget wise. Make some decisions from there.
Gotta check your homework through there. Check the back.
At the back.
I'm not sure. Back on here first, yeah, it's back.
Lynette is supposed to be coming, but she said she was gonna be running a few minutes late. I included in your packet her worksheet, and I've got David Luther here, so if y'all got any questions, you can ask him. Okay, so the sheet, it's got the current rates, the effective rates, and the way that I figured it, at 94% collection. Last year, when the judge had David come and y'all adopted this, and I included that page, the difference in why it looks off is because I did not add the over 65 frozen exemption. So I did that on the second page, and on the back, you can see what rate you're gonna have to adopt to be able to maintain your level of services. So that's why you have all that in there, and that's why I have him here, so if you've got any questions, because I think, David, you said you had to be gone from here by 9:30.
Hey, Jack, do you have another one of those sheets with the,
Do what?
do you have another one of those sheets with the bill on the back?
It's the second one.
Better see how better.
David, what's your time that you need to be leaving by?
I need to leave by, 9:15.
Okay.
Between 9:15 and 9:30.
Good deal.
You want me to say something or wait, give your question?
Well, I just wanted them, any questions they got to ask you, they can ask you now, and before they make their decision. And we do have coffee in the next room if somebody cannot get lunch yet. Where's that?
Probably the most glaring thing is that you've had a huge increase in value from the oil wells, oil and gas wells. We're up probably $90 million. And take that with the appraisal of the homes and put all that together, you've had a pretty significant increase. The legislature 4 years ago changed the way we look at rollback rates and effective rates, changed the names of them. Pretty well made it a lot more difficult to bring in more money without publicity to the taxpayer. So what's basically happened is the legislature says if the values go up, the rate ought to come down to generate the same amount of total money. And that's what they call the no new revenue rate. And then the voter approval rate is, they give you a little bit of cushion there to increase your rate by 3.5% basically. If you exceed that, then you have to have an automatic election. If you do a rate between the no new revenue rate and the voter approval rate, then you just have to have a public hearing and then adopt the rate. Two deadlines that are in there. So what's basically happening, we calculated the rate from what was 62 cents now to around 50 cents. That's a pretty significant reduction. And I apologize for last year not stressing about the adding the frozen tax. There is $203 million worth of value for the people that are over 65 are 100% disability and social security numbers. That $202 million will generate right at $1.2 million. But we freeze the taxes on those that are over 65. It's the first year that they achieve that age, or the disability. If you take off the deductions because of the excess over and above the three, that brings that down to about $700,000. So because of the limitations that we have on the elderly and the Social Security disability people, then you lose about $500,000. Over time, that will continue to grow a little bit each year. And it'll also kind of level back down as well too, because people are dying as new people come on. So,
Younger people buy the place.
But it is very significant. And especially when I didn't stress it to y'all last year. I know we were real tight on pennies and all, so at least I know that I think we met what we said we were gonna do.
And those people apply for that, right? It's not automatically that they get it.
On the old 65
Yeah,
it's when someone applies for their homestead exemption, the legislature made us start getting their birthday.
okay.
And when they turn 65, we have to notify them and let them know that, I mean, it's not automatic,
Right.
but at least we have a mechanism where we can remind the taxpayer to come in. Otherwise, it's up to them. Up to them.
How do you do the notification, David? How do you do the notification?
By letter.
Okay.
So,
Did you get it?
David, just to help in the understanding, when I was calculating the other day, the total impact, I was looking at both special and general fund, and there was a, good gap, but can you help us to understand that this additional $90 million is driving this reduction from the 62.92 to the 50.19 rates? Because it seems significant.
see how to best explain it. Your total value has gone from right at 1.3 billion last year to 1.5 billion this year. And that includes some, other kinds of properties that are included in it. The mill, part of the abatement comes off every year, so we pick up value there. So when you look at that all together, talk about $1.5 billion, and that's a pretty significant increase, which is gonna cause a significant decrease in the rate, as well.
Would you also help us to know what your understanding is of the 3.5 either cents or percent factor?
What happened is, if we look at last year's value multiplied times last year's rate, and then there's a series of adjustments that are made. If there were refunds made because of late homesteads or things like that, then we have to plug that into the formula. If there's any new construction that's been built since the previous year, we have to subtract that out. They don't use that value to force you down on the tax rate with the theory that growth causes greater government. So they're gonna give you that benefit for 1 year, and then it comes into play after that. So after you go through the series of adjustments, you end up with an adjusted tax roll, or tax levy. And then we take the new values and we make adjustments there also. The only way I know to ever explain it is if I have two buckets, and I have last year's bucket and this year's bucket, the formulas say we have to compare the same properties last year to the same properties this year. So if I've got new construction, and didn't have it last year, then we pull those out of this bucket. If I have, houses that were demolished or damaged, and they go off roads, and then pull them out of this bucket. And I'll pull that excess value out. So that we're looking at the identical set of properties from one year to the next. Then, at that point, we take last year's revenue, divide it by this year's value. That generates what they call the no new revenue rate. When we get down to the voter approval rate, you're basically going to take this year, last year's, let's see if I say it right. You're gonna calculate last year's M&O rate, which would be the part that you use for general operations. And then multiply the times the value and come up with the taxes. And then you increase that by 3.5%. That plus any debt that you might have, which I don't think you'll have any.
Do not.
That becomes a voter approval rate.
So it's 3.5% of the value. You can increase up to 3.5% of the market value, the taxable value. Is that right? Or the levy of the
It's actually times the rate, so whenever I divide last year's revenue into this year's value, I get a rate,
Okay.
then I add 3.5% to that.
To that rate.
Right.
Just a point of clarification for conversation. The 0.5019, which is the no new revenue tax rate, which is the old effective rate
Right.
terminology.
Right,
And the voter approval rate is 8 and basically a half cents variance between that and the 0.5877.
and I need to explain that too. There is some additional pennies added in. The legislature said that if you had voter approval rates in the past and you did not use any of it in any 1 year, then you get to bank those for 3 years. So if I didn't use 3 cents 3 years ago, if I didn't use any of the 3 cents, then I put that in the bank. And then 2 years ago, if I used a penny of the 3 cents, if that happened to be what it was, I can't use any of that. But if I didn't use it, I'd get another 3 cents in the bank. And then do the same thing for the year closest to you.
But it's a
And you get to
percentage
add
of the
those
value.
together, you get to add those together and add it to the voter approval rate.
It's a percentage,
So
but we're
that's what
talking
it causes,
pennies,
that's
right?
what causes that significant difference between the two.
If you're talking, we didn't use a penny of it, but it's actually a percentage, right? I mean, we're using, it goes from percentage, you're allowed 3.5%, but you
Right.
convert that.
3.5%, and then we get to add these
That's right. So,
unused increment rates.
so this,
But
this
if you
voter,
use 1% of that 3.5%, then you can't use any of it the next year, right?
No, you can do that. If you use any of those pennies, after the 3.5%, if you use any of those pennies in any one of those years, you lose the rest of those
Right,
pennies
that's
for
what I'm
that
saying.
year.
okay,
You still get the other 2 years.
what you didn't use, as long as you didn't use it, you get to bank it, right?
Right.
So this
So I
voter
thought you were
approval
saying-
rate is with all of those passed that we didn't use,
Yeah.
which is 1 year, right, or this year and last year, right? And, yeah,
I'll tell you how much it is to the city.
do we have the hospital stuff too, Jackie? I see
I
that.
do not.
Okay, David, just so that we can be sure that we get a good, strong command of understanding, because of this 8 cents, 8.5 cents between the no new revenue and the voter approval, any 3 of those cents that constitutes that 8.5 cents can be utilized without it triggering our voter approval.
Right.
So just foundational, because we do this once a year, to generate the exact same amount of money for the budget, which last year was $7,359,980 at 0.6292 rate, cents rate per hundred. It's now 5,019.
That's correct.
So that's going to generate that exact same amount of taxes.
Right.
So sense-wise, to the homeowner, to the property owner, to the one that's being taxed, it's up 12.9 cents variance there between last year and then this new rate. If we take, go ahead.
I should mention that, there's 6.6 cents was in those bank for prior years. When that doesn't show up, it does in the calculations. One thing we have to talk about is the rates are actually higher than that, but because of sales tax collections, y'all opted years ago to, levy a partial sales tax
Correct.
to directly offset the property tax. That also forces that to go down to 50 cents. Otherwise, it would be up to the 70.
You said it forces it to go down into the 50 cents, meaning the current rate, meaning the, I'm sorry, the no new revenue rate.
Right,
Okay,
right,
okay.
right.
Because of the sales tax.
Right.
So what is the 707,000 on the frozen? Is that including new property built since last year, or does that not include? Or is there another figure?
That would include it.
That's included in that, okay.
Well, no, it wouldn't, because if it's new, it's not frozen for the second year.
Okay.
We don't have anything,
There's no exemption on you.
but it will be in the next.
Do we have that number, or is that number already added into any of these figures?
It's added in the totals, but it's not added into the frozen tax, because their tax that first year is gonna calculate just like everybody else's.
But we will have that figure in the end of how much of it is new,
Yeah.
new build, right?
Today, I have $707,034.
That's the frozen and the new property, right? New
No,
property.
it's just the frozen.
Just frozen, yeah. Well, I wondered, do we have a figure for the new property?
I don't.
You don't, okay.
David, are you anticipating that the new property will be significant or?
Let me be clear, there's no new value, new property value in the frozen tax. Otherwise, there is in my totals, there is included in that, all the property.
In the no new revenue.
Right.
And then, go ahead.
Last year we had 134,000 of new property. That, I just wondered if we had that figure, or you can get us that figure. I just wonder how much new
Yeah,
property.
last year, I think y'all got off on a couple of different roads, and I wasn't on the same road.
Okay.
It is what it is, so whatever it calculates out to be, after you do all the work in quantum, you gotta eventually get to the end and do like, Jackie does, it says, I've got to figure out how much money is gonna show up on the tax roll, how much we're gonna bill the people.
Correct.
And then I've got to estimate, what's my collection rate gonna be? How good are we gonna be able to collect that money? So it's kind of two things that we do. One is the reality, and the other is,
A best guess.
fairness and justice to the people, to make sure that you're not, running bags up. Running tax up.
So line number 23 is a total of 2022 taxable of new improvements. So that would be that 14,863 total. Is that, am I looking at the correct number for that?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's taken out of the calculation to get to the 0.5019.
Right. Okay,
But in the end, it's part of the.
it's part of the formula, yeah. We just don't have a number, a real number we can look at on what it produced.
You might wanna look at line 19.
Are you looking in general or?
No,
I'm looking at-
that's a worksheet.
at general, on the worksheet.
Yeah.
It's got a copy of it.
Did you not get one, line numbers?
Line 19 is pretty significant for me, because it's kind of a subjective number. We have protests that are still pending, people have a right to have their hearing. But the law requires that we come up with an estimate of value, what we think it might end up being. Well, I could be biased and say we're gonna win them all, or I could be realistic and say we're gonna lose some. It also does not include the local business personal property, like the inventory, Brooks Brothers, and, furniture and fixtures and things of that sort. I'm not talking about the mill and industrial type property, so I just the local. Does not include any of that, or did not include any of that. So we had to make an estimate of what that would be. So in the 54 million that I added back in, that is for a couple of real estate investment trusts that own a lot of timberlands that did not get everything to us that we needed to be able to give them their benefit. That number staggered, it's over $250 million. Because we took the benefit away from them, because we didn't have what we needed to process it. Well, I knew we were not gonna get to tax $250 million on timberland. So I ran that back to what it would have been had they have done it, and included that number in the 54 million. If I put the 250 million in there, that rate would have dropped to
Oh, yeah,
30 cents,
Well,
and
wait.
it would have been,
would have been the true number.
I would have been doing a total disservice to y'all, even trying to bring that up. But it does give us the opportunity to do some estimates. Lakeland addition is not in there as well. We just got our information too late to try to put that, so we still have that to work on.
Is that property, the property owned, it came off the ag side though, did it?
Yeah.
They lost their ag connection,
Yeah.
just didn't add in anything
That's correct.
more than the less than the ag.
We just don't know. There's only one section that we're gonna get to do this year, because it had to be done by January 1st, and I think y'all approved it last November or December, that one, I think. So we get to put it on. I don't even remember how many lots there are. Whatever it is. The other sections that were approved after the first of the year will go on their own as individual lots next year.
So David, is it still appropriate to say that we generate about a penny, on a penny of levy, we generate about $138,443.
With these numbers, that would go up to 140, 150.
Okay,
That's on the general fund.
that's on the general fund. So every penny we levy will gross us,
$550,000 at the most.
well,
Now,
no,
let me,
Well, it depends on where you put the rate at.
well, what I'm saying, just to simplify it,
Yeah,
in other words, there's $1,384 million. So every penny has the potential to generate a gross amount of $138,443.
but
So times a collection rate of 94% would bring it down.
the 138,000, though, this figure doesn't include any of the exemptions in there. Correct? The one,
I
1.8.
think those already, I think they're already taken out. Line 25,
Well, I'm talking about the general fund on the taxable value. That's where you get $138,400 on the no new rate.
let me look to make sure. Without the frozen taxes in there, it would be literally 129,149.
Or
Did
what,
the math of that, and that's at 100%, that's not,
that's at 100%.
and that's not adding in the frozen tax.
129.
Let me tell you,
About 130,000.
just for your own information, we had a real difficult time with our program that we used for many, many years to do all these calculations, where we had to put everything in. There's a company that ended up acquiring the program from another company, and they redid it. There's a 2-week period that all the clients throughout the state has to go through the process. We're supposed to have things out by August 7th, to present to the governing body. We had trouble accessing the programs. I went a day and a half and I couldn't do anything. It would go down, back it up, go down, back it up. And I couldn't trust it. With these larger companies, you have to kind of put in a ticket, a service ticket, and then they get to you whenever they get to you. I later found out that we weren't the only ones that had a problem, and that there were actually some little quirks in the program that was spitting out some wrong numbers. I'm saying all of this qualified based on those programs being accurate. We've done a lot of the math manually to go through to make sure. I think we're okay. But we weren't too pleased with what we had to go through to get to the numbers we are. That's why, yeah, I think back out a page that looked like this. That's why I did that, is because I couldn't get it out of their program. So I manually came up with, if anything changes, I'll certainly do a recalculation and come back to you and let you know. I don't anticipate that happening, but knowing what we went through, I need to make sure to let y'all know that.
David, if the court applies the 3 cent that has been allowed by the legislature above the no new revenue tax rate, and we estimate it based upon your numbers and look at a potential collection at 94%, it's going to be roughly $363,000. If our conversation and our calculations are all in agreement, and they're all needing to be verified, but based upon what we've heard this
Plus
morning.
a share of the produce taxes
Okay,
included to be added to it wouldn't be much, it would be some.
okay. So here's the question. If we're looking at a deficit in the budget or a potential increase in several different categories, then that 3 cents could be applied this year, or any portion of that 3 cents to the rate. Would it also apply to the special?
Yes.
Okay, so it could be
It
collected.
also applies to the unused increment rate that you have banked.
That's what this is the unused.
Okay, so now I'm confused, because I got I was on the phone a long time with one that did the presentation on the bank. So this 0.5877, the voter approval tax rate that Lynette came up with, that bank's not included in that?
It is.
It is.
It is,
Yes,
okay,
it
so
is.
it's not above and beyond,
No, I was just saying the 3.5% is not included.
right,
You can go up 3.5%, and then the increment rate, a whole other set that comes in there.
but that 0.5877 includes the extra that we were able to bank,
Our
correct?
bank, yes.
Yes.
So next year, if we use this, every bit of this voter approval rate up to the 5.877 or 5.876, next year, there would only be 3.5%
Right,
because
right.
we used all of our bank
Or if you used any
part of it.
penny, or a part of a penny of any of those three,
Yeah,
then you lose all three of them.
okay.
I think it's helpful to understand that there's percentage and
Right.
then there's cents.
Right.
And they're two different calculations that are applied a little bit differently.
So the-
Yeah, it's interesting because I look at raw numbers. I don't think of budget. Because everything I do is based on 100% collection.
And we're looking at
Budget
net.
purposes, you'll have to do the additional.
Yeah, we're looking at net. How many spendable pennies equate to dollars to satisfy the appetite that the budget says that we want to live off of?
So you have to adjust whatever I do.
Correct.
By that, whatever it needs to be.
For the people that are listening, there's a 80-step worksheet that they have to go through to come up with these rates. And so it takes them, it's 6 or 7 pages long, and that's the official worksheet, I guess, of how you get to those rates. But it's pretty mind-boggling, and
It's one of those stressful, short periods that we have to do complicated things. And I'm not sure the legislature did any favors, to make it more understandable for the public. I just, after having been through 2 or 3 years of this, it just doesn't seem to be working. People don't understand what it is. They took the estimated taxes off of our notices that was sent to taxpayers. That created a huge amount of phone calls, just from people that are over 65. Said, you took my over 65 pension away. We didn't, we just don't have to show it on there, or we can't show it on there. And, so getting to that process, I'm not sure it's really accomplished everything that they had hoped for. Other than a lot more work on y'all's behalf and,
and they only change that, or have the ability to change that in session every 2 years. And so they put into effect this law or procedure requirement. And then you run with it for 2 years, whether it works or not, and then 2 years later, you get to adjust it. But it can be pretty, cause a headache. Because it's so
I think their
long.
intentions were very, very good. Taking the estimated taxes off the appraisal notices was probably a good idea, and that they would never correct anyway.
Because they're using last year's
Based
rate.
on prior year rates, and so it didn't really work. But taking it off created another set of problems. Now, what's supposed to happen, I think it hit the mail this weekend. We had to send out postcards to every property owner. And they're supposed to be able to go to the website that's printed on the card and actually call up their property and see what the proposed tax would be on their own home. So the website is activated, but we don't have all the numbers in there yet because we have to know what the proposed rate's gonna be.
Right, that number would come from what?
Right.
The real
And
number.
y'all are not in the time crunch that school districts are in. They have to have everything done by August 31st of the 10-day advance notice. So they're right now under big crunch. I'm not sure what as far as tax publication deadlines are in good shape. I think y'all have some special deadlines that apply to counties only.
Yes, we did.
This is so complicated, I'm not sure if anyone really knows. I mean, you ask 100 people, you probably get 100
Yeah,
different answers.
people understand that you had $1 million last year, and you're going up to 1.2 million this year, and you're keeping the rate the same, something's not right. If they say you had $1 million last year and $1 million this year, and the rate went down because their values went up, then they see something. Unfortunately, it's not a dollar for dollar adjustment. I might have a property that goes up 30% in value, the tax rate only comes down 15%. That person's still gonna see some increase. And it's just the way it is.
Which is
Tax
one
rate
property,
is not applied to
no exemptions.
each individual taxpayer situation, it's applied across the whole gamut. A lot to throw at you.
David, do you have a copy of this sheet of Lynette's in front of you?
I do not,
Everything.
but I've seen it.
Okay. Just for conversation
Here, I
purposes.
got one.
Okay. If I have looked at this correctly and subtracted correctly based upon her calculations under the general fund category, on the no new revenue tax rate line, and on the 0.5019 levy, the estimate at 94% collection rate would be the $6,948,000. Okay, go down to the next line where it says voter approval tax rate, which is the rollback. And then the calculation of the 0.5877, the levy, 8,136,342. That's a difference at a 94% collection rate of roughly $1,187,000. Would you agree? Bear with me just a second. That's going to be adjusted a little bit.
Here's the net. You get it on the back. Okay.
What I'm trying to understand before he has to leave is anything that we move away from no new revenue tax rate moves us down to that voter approval rate. How much would that net us?
With the
So-
94%.
Correct, because you can. Let's see.
So here's the
Well, you
figure.
can go to this-
Right.
But
If you exercise your
if you look at the
authority
second
to
one,
go
it's
to
on
the
the
voter
fifty.
approval rate, 1 point, the number you said, 1,187,000. Is that 8,136, is that 94% off the?
I
No,
did not do that. I just did what I
Oh,
typically
this is
do.
Lynette. I don't,
There's Lynette.
there's Lynette.
Can you get there?
One Lynette.
Or she had a good one.
yeah, that's the gross amount at
Woman of the hour.
$94 million. So it has the potential in an 8
If we
cent.
went all the way up,
Right,
you know our,
8 cent variance.
our potential.
Correct.
I do the 94%. She gives me the actual levy and I do the 94%.
Oh, okay.
David, last year you talked with us about those values which are not reflected in any of the figures that are still under review.
I didn't do that this year, so
It's on the
Okay.
worksheet, yeah.
it's in there as an estimate, Or it's in there and certified.
Okay, very good. So we should not even think about the possibility that there will be values that'll be given to Lynette that she'll send statements out on, other than,
That I haven't already included.
okay,
One exception,
okay,
and that is, sometimes all the gas companies are not real prompt in getting their records filed quickly with the railroad commission. There is a possibility there may be another well out there that was completed by January the 1st that we don't know about yet. And they are, company we use in Austin is constantly checking to see if that's happened. If that happens, that's possibly another good
Shot in the arm.
Yeah,
source of revenue.
that would make our rate go down generally.
Well, if we don't know it,
Yeah,
then you already got your rate,
Right.
you get that full tax for that year.
Right.
They're gonna make us do an
Maybe on the
adjustment.
next year, yeah,
it'd be just like a little perk or a bonus.
right.
Okay.
Until next year.
Yeah, till next year.
Well, it'll help when you use fund balance to balance the budget like we're having to do. It'll help if you try to go to the exact, like this at the last minute. The budget calendar says July 25th, he has to give us the estimated certified totals. That's what we're supposed to figure on. That's what she works on to get the worksheet. Can it change like this did? Absolutely.
But it's an estimate.
But it's an estimate. All of it is an estimate. But you're still using fund balance to balance your budget, because ideally you create a budget and adopt a tax rate to fund it. Now with the new law, it's gonna make that more difficult.
What was the date of the meeting that we had last year that we did?
September the 8th,
Okay. So it's possible I could still come back September the 8th, and if there's any adjustments, give y'all an update.
but we gotta get,
If there's anything significant, I'm gonna give it to you right away.
right, we have that in the budget calendar. We've got to hold a public hearing not later than the 25th day after the budget, which was the proposed budget that he filed on the 29th of July. If you count 25 days, and that's tomorrow will be the
Got
25th day. So we've got to notify, it's got to go in the paper when we're going to have a public hearing, if we're going to have a public hearing, to meet all the advertising requirements that she's got to do.
David, it's probably time for you to go 9:18.
Okay.
Okay. We're more important than they are.
Want to take over?
Yeah, would you like to help clear the muddy water? We're waiting.
I was telling them the frustration we've had with the program.
Yes.
Caused a lot of delay.
So, go over those dates again. What do we gotta do by when?
by
We're
tomorrow.
down to the wire, in other words.
Well, as far as setting a public hearing, if you intend to go above the no new revenue rate.
Right.
Because it also says at the conclusion of the public budget hearing, Commissioners Court, it says may vote to adopt budget. This may be done at the same meeting or future meeting. If the court plans to adopt the budget at the same meeting, make sure to include a separate item on the agenda for the actual adoption. The vote to adopt the budget must be a record vote.
So would they have to vote on a tax rate at the same time, or can it be done later? Usually it would be done later, but I don't know if it's the way it is for the county.
Well, if you read the tax calendar, it says may vote. If you read the local government code, it says shall.
It's more important.
But everybody, you know, has known to adopt after that, but I don't wanna step off in that.
And that's what,
We don't do anything that's in subjection to a potential challenge to the process or anything.
that's why we have like 5 or 6 or 7 regular court meetings scheduled, so, because some of these things have to be done at a regular meeting. You can't do it at a special time, you have to do it at a regular meeting. Whether we use them or not, it's there if we need them.
But and also, if you go above that, it says at least 10 days before a public hearing, if salary, expenses, or other allowance of elected officials are being increased, public notice of the increase has to be in the paper. So you got 2 advertisements, well, actually 3, Lynette, isn't that right? We gotta do the proposed rate. We have to do if we're gonna increase anything for the elected officials and adopt the tax rate.
There's a need to take the vote, and that appears in the hearing notice. That's,
Hey, can you do me a favor and go back to my desk and bring my calendar book in here? It's the black one. Okay, thanks.
yes, is after the governing body has proposed a tax rate, it must publish a notice of its proposed tax rate, and may have to hold a public hearing before it adopts the rate. So, a meeting to vote, and then another one to, for a hearing and for adopt the rate. I do have the hospital's certified rates from Mr. Rupert and the estimates if y'all want to see them, if they're not.
Okay. Can you get, Megan, can you get with Sandra, she's got some numbers that we need to make a copy of.
I have.
You have-
Oh, you have a copy? Oh, she's way ahead of you, Megan, sorry.
Thank you.
I think it's not we're having to. If you go backwards, you'll show you the estimated tax.
At the back.
It's about 2 pages in. And then I can tell you right now. I thought you already had this.
David, you'll remain available for follow-up questions at a later time, right?
Sure.
Okay.
And I mean, I can be back at 11.
We're gonna go into the regular commissioners court meeting at 10.
We can,
If we recess and need to come back, we just shoot you a message.
Yeah.
No, I just told you wrong about the 25th. The 25th day, I'm ahead of myself, it's the 23rd of August. So we have to publish in the paper a public hearing this week for next week. Am I right? Yeah. It's gotta come out here. You have the workshop today, you have to publish whatever you're gonna do for, then you publish it for the 22nd. No. It's gotta be what, 10?
So we gotta publish what we're gonna do on the eighth.
Yeah. I can't really hear what she said.
So it would go in the paper on the 18th, and you've gotta give at least 10 days, but not more than 30. Not less than 10, but not more than 30. I read that. It's 10, but no more than 30. It's 10 days. So we have to go out on the paper this week for the 29th. Okay. The 29th would be the soonest. Right.
I'm gonna run.
Okay,
Okay.
Thank you, Dave.
thank you, Dave.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
I have to decide the rate this day, so you can publish it in the paper. And it's 5 days. So it's going to be 24, 5 would be 5. So this would be the proposed. Then they would have to vote on it, or have it off the regular bid. Not the 6th.
It's here. It's out here.
Well, we've got until 5 o'clock on that night tomorrow. I wanted to set, I got to decide something today. So public hearing will be on proposed. And then I would have a meeting on the proposed rate. And then I would have hearing. We don't have to go to get So that clears mud?
Oh, I heard you talking, but I'm not sure I heard what you come up with.
Okay, we have a weekly paper, and we want to publish it in our local paper, because if we publish it in Beaumont Enterprise, the fee is astronomical.
Right.
So it says on the budget calendar, the 25th day after the day the budget was filed, which is the proposed budget. The 25th day is the 23rd. So we need to have a public hearing on the 29th. For the proposed rate. And then when you do the proposed rate on the 29th in court, then she publishes it in the paper. And she has, it has to be adopted 5 days. I think. They can adopt it the same way they do.
That'll be on the agenda.
Yeah, we have a meeting scheduled for the 6th. But we do have to hold something on the 29th to make that requirement.
The tax rate is not adopted at the public hearing, it needs to vote on the tax increase.
And that's. And then 6 would be.
But maybe but we would still have to remember this.
That's great. Well, that's the way because the clarification of the difference between the 3.5% and the 3.5 cents. It's 3.5 cents is you're going up the limits amount, which legislature says you can, it's not offensive.
Right.
They made it into law. So
Even if you could, even if you're correct, even about the budget approval rate on our small budget, still go look at that.
Stephen, my belief is we can go up to 5, 8, 7, 0, and still have representatives to,
On top of that,
on top of that, as long as you expense the limits, then you don't have it back.
every, just that.
What I understand is that it's allocated a few years paid to try to control life. Well, right now, until they change the law.
Okay, yeah.
But the way.
So it's not a yearly thing.
No, because remember he was talking about if you use a penny this year and you use it.
Well, that-
You only get 2 cents going next year.
Yeah, but we can still, that's where the 3.5% comes in. So this is what we plus this year. So we keep this as the bank, but we did go up last year. And what we can go up this year, and if we get, that's just totally. Yeah, so we can go up 3.5%. We get 3.5% every year, you can go up, which you get this year. So we can increase it by 3.5%, which after so every year we can up to that.
That's the permanent way the legislature.
Used to be 8.5%, right, straight. So every year you can go up 3.5% on this country, which equates. This year is 3.5%, and last year what we didn't go up is actually, we're gonna go 1%. Last year, we were still 2.5%. This year, because I wrote it over. Well, this number is this year, so last year, percentage that we did.
And if we went with this year, it's on the minimums.
Yeah. That's last year.
But I want to put you
Yes. Right.
if we went to this from
Right.
then we are applying what's available to us. And literally just extending it all in 1 year. That's how I'm thinking. So anything that you can do will have to come from this, whatever that is next year. You can move toward that voter approval. As long as you don't trigger that
Right.
5, 8 cents.
Right. Yeah, we can go up to 5.7 to 6. So it's still be fine.
One of the questions that I had is like,
This budget right here, that's
based with potential salary increases, right? Is this a general fund?
Oh, I don't.
I did.
I don't have that. I'd have to look and see what it was.
From 12,500.
I have to
If you go through,
go.
if you go through here, look at salaries, it's based on, there's no,
So that's a collection.
We have.
That's all.
This is. Within 7 days.
if you're trying to simplify just in building
So, y'all just
Opposed?
let it decide. Building that.
And we just focus on how much the middle is to generate. That's why I was trying to calculate that additional amount. And then it would give us a base without having to say that we are moving away from the no new rate. There's some stuff on board that can be perceived as being like increasing our taxes. Either way, it's going to be an increase in taxes from here, but by virtue of the fact that the legislature recognized that the minimum rate gave us basically a courtesy when they changed everything. And they said, we recognize the hardship of the county because we've gone from the margin. And so therefore, you get a one-time, get out of jail for See, I don't understand that. That's why I was asking you for the clarification, is that you get a whole max one time.
So in budgets that are smaller than ours, so the budgets that are.
Right, and I got that from 29, because that's before we'll have to file it for this one. Well, right, so then she'll put it in the paper
So you can use your de minimis rate.
and they'll adopt it. You know, it's gotta be within 7 days from the time she puts it in the paper.
Affect that local budget numbers. You have a budget.
It's not, we're in a budget workshop, you're in a workshop. You're doing.
But when you go to the minimum. You won't trigger an election budget. So the minimum will trigger what you keep. So it will still help us because we're the ones that figure.
I think it's relevant. It's all relevant, because if you, and I've been able to understand it this way, if you're, say, 25. I'm gonna cut it down to 2,000. You're good.
But that's.
If they give you, say, you get this, you're going down, but you get a whole ice cream. That to me is. Right, understand, if I understand it correctly, I'm not saying this.
It's beneficial.
Yes. And to me, it's all relevant based upon everything that happened. Because that's what you're building your budget, is based upon how you're trying to.
I think I'm right along the lines with what the judge said. See, this is what we did last year. So that has an increase. You don't look at their salary increases.
But that number is that's where we start out. So that's what's that.
Gotta be treated that way, right underneath that. That's a Eckler.
Right. Yeah, so that number is put in the bank right here, and then you build your appetite for that. But that's gonna be at the rate, whatever that is.
So here's where the last year rate was, that's what Joe's looking at. On the general fund, is the rate last year. To generate revenue. But Joe, don't confuse with what this part not is. That's why this figure, because this is. No.
Well, this is what I wrote down, on last year's budget, the 7,359,980. And, this is the end of year report right here from last year. And that's got the ad valorem, which we're gonna be voting on Go and look at the budget. I know you have all these other things factored in, general fund, but this is gonna include
Get that other way.
salary increases.
Next year.
So I'd like to see this is last year's budget. The whole election is 7,287 with the new property. So that was our total collection last year. 78.
These are my old things. You gotta take them back and make sure.
You add that carry over. But if this is including increase, looking,
We need to be talking.
base,
Yeah. That's
Joe, the gross amount of the rate is not the net amount of collection. Because we're only calculating, we're going to collect 95% of that rate that we set. So we show that we have the potential to collect that much. The reality is it's adjusted down by 6%.
I guess what I'm getting at is collection.
There's some years.
Is what I'm getting at. Is that's what we start rebuilding.
Then it works for it.
That's why I
Do it.
That's what it's
Well, I mean, we got it over last year, but we can see where.
Was there anything that y'all wanted to talk to Sandra about? while she was here? Sandra, was there anything that you wanted to,
Well, I don't have numbers yet, but then told me that she would get them as soon as she could. But we were estimating to get like the $2.8 million last year. I don't think that we've gotten there on collection. So we're gonna have a little bit of shortfall on collection, and I only know up until June the 30th, and I have only unaudited numbers. But we're about 384,000 over what we collected for indigent care. So, you know, and I don't wanna give those numbers to you until they come back to be certified by the auditor. So it'll be at a later date, but I'm not sure exactly when that later date will be. Maybe by
What was the number last year that the deficit that we did not collect? that y'all had-
$288,000 was our deficit last year.
And that's on the tax rate for the indigent
Correct.
care. that we said.
Medically and financially. Yes.
So y'all covered, the hospital covered the 288,000 that we didn't collect.
Correct.
And so far this year, estimated, you're at 384 so far.
Yes, we're estimating at that.
So you probably don't need an increase in your rate to get that up to where the people in Tyler County are responsible for the indigent care of the medical.
Yes, if, in that aspect, if you look at it like that, the people of Tyler County are responsible for the medically and financially indigent, and not getting quite enough to cover those aspects since the law changed a couple of years ago.
Okay, thank you, Sandra. It's about 15 minutes until we start our regular budget workshop, a regular agenda. Is there a desire that we take about a 15-minute break out of workshop and go into recess?
How about if we need to go into our other regular meeting, that we don't need to be in workshop, is that right?
Correct, so we need to
Let's
go
go
into
to
recess
recess
for the
to-
workshop, and then we take a break and come back into regular session at 10.
So what time do you want to meet back for a workshop?
Well, we'll post,
Like after lunch, you think, or
it's whatever you want to do.
It doesn't matter.
I don't know how long the other meeting's gonna last, is the only thing. The regular meeting.
We just gotta, what are we gonna decide what we're gonna do against the workshop?
But you can't decide anything in the works, you can't vote on anything, you can talk about it, but there's still lots of talking that needs to be done.
Yeah.
So I say, let's postpone, recess until 1 o'clock, that way we can go to our other meeting at 10, everybody go get lunch, be back at 1 to continue on the workshop. Does that give you enough time to get, well, we can't vote on anything.
Is there a second to the motion for recess to 1 from the workshop? Okay, there is a second. Comments? All in favor, aye? And it was unanimous. We will recess our budget workshop until 1 p.m. Okay, thank you.